guys, part 7. Okay, this week it's going to be dedicated to cutting the mortises for the hinges, how to resolve some issues that may sort of arise, alignment, breakout, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so what you want to start off with first, so we can get it sort of set up, we've got in a router, we've got it's actually a 5/16 bit. It's not an 8mm bit, 5/16. I actually like to start off slightly undersized. The reason being, a lot of routers, including my own, bearings go, they don't run exactly true. There's a bit of run out and so forth. So you can end up getting slightly wider cut. And I prefer to have a sort of neater cut. I've got a fence system that I can move it very slightly if I need it. Okay, so we've got our cutter, and what I've got on my table and along the bottom edge of my fence is some slick tape, which is actually UHMW tape. Okay, it's quite expensive, but it's sort of twofold. Tape there, it's obviously nice slick movement, plus the tape lifts your box fractionally off the table, so all these wee sort of grooves and all tend to sort of show up. No matter how smooth this is, they tend to show up sort of like scores and marks. I mean, quite honest, you can use masking tape if you want, you know, but I like this sort of stuff. Now, the one along the bottom of the fence is, again, nice smooth surface so that we're not marking the box. But also what you want is, you want your box to contact here. For instance, if your fence wasn't square, or if your fence was perfectly square and your box was just slightly out, whether that was through sanding or when the miters were cut and so forth, you don't want the upper part touching here, because then when you come to do the lower part of your box, it may be touching here. That's going to give you a side to side misalignment. Okay, with it having the tape here, it means the point of contact is here. Okay, so do you understand that? It's very important that. Now again, you can just run masking tape there if you want. I sort of like this. Or you can have a very short fence. You know, you could have a fence that's sort of, you know, 15mm high. You know, that's fine, you know. Okay, so we've got that. And what I do first is I take a measurement of a box. Okay, I take a measurement of the wall thickness. On this, it's 14.5mm. Approximately an 8mm bit. Subtract that away from your thickness. Okay, that gets you 6.5mm. Wasn't very good at school. I calculated this before. Okay, so it gets you 6.5mm, right? Then you divide that in two. That gives you 3.25. That's the distance you want between the fence and your bit. So come down here a sec. So between the fence and here, this gap here, 3.25mm, or whatever thickness you end up with. I mean, if you end up with 16mm, depending on what you started with and so forth, you subtract the 8 from 16, that would then give you 8mm. Divide that by 2, that gives you 4. So then that gap would have been then 4. Okay, but of course you don't just sort of say, right, I'll set that there and just go straight into the box. Definitely never. You want to sort of start with just like some MDF scrap. Okay, this is just to set the fence gap, and it's also there to set your depth of your cut. So depth of cut. Okay, some people like to have it so there's zero, okay, a zero gap at the back of your box. I don't like that because it's just too fine, right? I like a very, very small gap at the back of the box. That ensures that the front is closing and is neat. Now the wee fraction at the back, once you add some micro bevels, looks lovely, nice and clean, okay? And if you can see the hinges, we've designed these hinges so that the front of the hinge is closing, and if you go towards the back of the leaves, there's a tiny, tiny gap there. Probably about 1/4 millimeter. So what I do is I measure the thickness of the leaf, okay? And what we've got is 3.26, 3.25, okay. So we want the depth of cut to be at least that, you know, you could sort of, it wouldn't be the end of the world if it was like 3.3, okay? But it's a sort of fine setup, so I want to get that setup correct to start off with. So we'll just take an approximate height of our bit there, and then we'll take a few cuts and see where we are, okay? Okay, so here's our first cut. We'll measure this. Okay, so that's 3.35. So that's a good head start. It has to be sort of 3.25, but it's 0.1. That's pretty decent. Okay, and then we want, now when you're measuring the sort of depth of these mortises, try not to have the piece scrap in your hand and you're sort of doing this, because if your calibers really aren't true, you're going to get false readings, okay? I like to set it down flat, okay, and then hold the calibers. Okay, so that's 2.84. So we need to raise the router bit up. Okay, we need to raise the router bit up by, let me see, approximately sort of, you know, 1/4 mil, about sort of 0.4. I didn't work that bit out beforehand. Okay, so we'll raise it up. Obviously, depending on what setup you have there, you know, some sort of routers should go in underneath, you know, and adjust it that way. Obviously, if you have sort of like, you know, the Incra sort of system, you know, it's pretty good. There's actually some digital readout ones which are, you know, good as well, of course. Okay, let's just check that again. Okay, so what we've got is 3.3, right? Fractionally deep. That's good, okay? Actually, I think, did I actually, 3.25, that's right, 3.25. Yeah. Right. With us sort of having a very good sort of head start there, we'll want to set up our stop so that we produce the cut. It can only go so far. So if you look at my stop, I actually modified this on the mill. It's got a single point contact there. The reason for that is if you have a stop, whether it's one of the more modern stops or it's just a piece of scrap wood and it's a long piece, if it's slightly like that, and then you set up your next stop and it's slightly like that, you know, you're going to get sort of quite sort of false readings. I like the single point. Basically what's going to happen is, if I can show it from the side here. So the stop is going to be on the fence, and the box is going to come in and it's going to touch that single point. Okay, so let's see, we need a wee bit of... Okay, so got our stop on. We make these cuts first, which is actually going against the rotation, the proper way to sort of route. And then when we do the other couple of mortises, we'll turn around and come in this way, which is with the rotation. Okay, so you want to have to set your distance between your router bit and this stop. You know, you're looking at 31 millimeters. You want a bit of scrap, but you don't want to use MDF because it can be a bit spongy. You either want, that's a bit of hard plastic, or you want sort of like, you know, hardwood, preferably sort of hard plastic, you know. So basically it's just in against the router bit, slide the stop up, okay, take her out. This is going to be our first cut. Now, what I like to do is a wee bit of hardwood, you know, a wee bit of walnut, is make a wee cut, double check my measurements. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, so that's the first mortise. Let's just check the side. Bang on. Okay, let's check our depth. Lovely. Bang on. Okay, so right guys, first cut. Okay, so what you want to do is you just want to check how, you know, well the hinge goes in. Okay, now that's neat. Okay, but some people might like that. I don't. That's just a bit too neat, because I'll tell you why. You're going to end up forcing the side out slightly. Okay, so what I'll do is when I go to make my cuts, I'll make a cut and then I'll back the fence off that way. Okay, fractional, 0.1 at the most. Another method is, if you don't have a decent fence system, what you can do is, no, you can't do that, can you? I have to think about that a wee. So if you were to make a cut, your first cut, if you do it on scrap, your first cut would have to be, if you find it too tight, what you want to do is then, see for your first cut, add a wee bit of masking tape to your side. Okay, this is only if you don't have a very good sort of, or a very accurate sort of fence system. Add a bit of masking tape to your side, make your cut, take the masking tape off, make your next cut. That'll move your lid that direction by. You don't want to be, if you have to widen your cut, you don't want to alter the thickness of this part here. You don't want to alter this. You only want to widen it at this side, because then that'll affect your alignment. But in saying that, if you're starting with an 8mm cutter, you know, you could find it's bang on. Depend, you know, there's quite a few variables. You know, router cutters, you know, 8mm, 5/16, they're not all exact. They have a tolerance to work to. Your router, how old is your router? How good? you know, bearings, all sorts of run out. There's quite a few variables, but again, always start with a scrap. It's a no-brainer. Okay, so I'm going to sort of widen that very, very fractionally, okay? Let's just do a wee cut. Okay, that's still a wee bit snug, so when I actually go to do the proper cuts, I'll move it 2 clicks. Okay, so our depth is set, our gap between the fence and the cutter is set. That's good. And we've set with our wee sort of stop, which is again 31 millimeters. That's the length. Okay, so it's really the misalignment that people are sort of having is really happening when you go to do your next set of cuts. You're resetting your stop. Even if you use the plastic block, which we will use, you're actually climb cutting. You're going with the rotation. It tends to pull you in. It can actually produce a slightly longer cut. Okay, but I'm going to show you that very, very shortly of how to sort of get more accurate results. Okay, now the next thing is what I want to show. I'll just actually show you quickly in this scrap box. Okay, so if we were going to sort of make mortise cuts here, remember this is just sort of scrap. You know, what you can get is on your first cuts, if on veneer, not much in solid wood, but on veneer, it can actually flick off a wee bit of veneer at this area. Okay, what it can also do is at this miter, it can flick off that wee tiny part there, which, to be quite honest, you know, that happens, you know, it's a pain to sort of get sorted, get fixed. So first, what we want to do is we want to actually scribe a few marks here so that we're not going to sort of break out on our veneer. Now, what I've got is just a couple of sort of basic jigs. This slot here is the width of the hinge. Okay, now this bit at the side is the distance between our fence and the router bit. This jig, really, this one's developed for 15 mil. That's 14.5. So I sort of made up a new one, okay? So that this part here is what our setup is. Now, what this does is, I'll just show you, get it around the right way. Okay, so this wee bit of wood here is sort of like, acts as a wee fence, okay? Mrs. Spielberg's struggling to sort of like get in there. Okay, so basically that comes on your edge like that, okay? And what you're doing is, with your scalpel, and a nice, fresh, clean, sharp scalpel, you're scribing here and here. Reasonably sort of like, let's see if I can get it down on, this might be easier if I just use it, just to show you. Okay, so we got it there. And you're not going to overrun, because that's the depth of your cut, remember? So the idea is you scribe here and here, so that that gives you a cleaner cut, okay? So it'll be the matter of going like this. Okay, so if you can see that, you get 2 wee scribe marks. You can reinforce them a bit more, there's no problems. And then of course when you come to do your other side, turn that around. Handy wee sort of device. I actually developed a wee sort of jig. I got these made a few years ago, and they sort of work like this. Okay, and you put your scalpel in. They work well. The only thing is that there's sort of, you know, the space in here is developed for 15 mil. So it doesn't suit, you know, all different thicknesses. You could have, I suppose, you know, a different one that goes on there for certain thickness, but you know, that's going to get quite expensive to actually make. These, you know, you can sort of knock them up quite easily. You could actually have a, if you're standard, if you have a couple of standard thicknesses, 12 mil, 14 mil, 16 mil, whatever, you can have a few, okay? But it's important that the distance that equals, that bit of walnut there equals the distance between your cutter and your fence, okay? Now, I'm going to show you on this what way I approach my cut. I don't just plow in there, okay? That's going to sort of result in a full depth cut. What I tend to do is I lightly plunge it, okay, so that I sort of like chip away at the initial part so that I get past the danger zone, so to speak. So this is just a scrap box, like, by the way, guys. Okay, boom. So this is going to be our method of approach. We're going to take and we're going to sort of nibble away until we get past the danger zone, which is really your sort of corner there where that wee tiny miter is just sitting. You know, you don't want it to flick off. So I'll just show you the way I approach it, and then we'll get into the box. So there you go, guys. There's the cut there. Again, this is just a scrap box. Okay. Any wee sort of furry edge you get there, you can just easily trim off. Okay. Lovely. Right, let's get into the real box. Step that aside. Okay, so this is going to be our first cut. This is the front. So again, remember the reference mark we put there. So this is going to be our back. So we want to scribe here. Okay, we can do this side while we're sort of here. Okay, let's just do the base. Remember, front, so we'll do the back. Okay, flip it over. Okay, so I always do this sort of lid part first. Again, I always sort of tend to wear gloves because the lid's not much to sort of hold on to, and this just gives it that wee extra bit of grip. Set all our jigs out of the way. Okay, they're switched on. So when you get a wee tiny bit like that, pop her off. Nice and clean, okay? Now remember, I have to actually widen this slightly, so I'm going to cut the base, move it over a bit. You know what I mean? On the new t-shirt got dusty. Okay. Okay. Coming soon, guys. Keep an eye out for them. Remember, the front of the box is towards your t-shirt. Okay. Okay. Folks, first mortise is cut. I just widened, but remember I was saying it was a wee bit tight, so I just moved my fence very slightly. Hinges are sort of fitting nice and neat there. Okay, so what we're going to do is move the stop onto the other side, and I'm going to show you what way I sort of deal to try and get the best alignment possible. Okay, so got our stop over here. Gonna move it over. Okay, so because you want the flute to be towards your stop, okay? Not like that. We're going to use the same block and slide the stop up. Take that out. Okay, now we're going to be feeding from this side this time. This is going to be climb cutting, okay, with the rotation of the cutter. So you got to just make sure you get a firm hold on your box. And should have mentioned at the start, you know, you really want to sort of have quite a sharp cutter. A new cutter, yeah, produce so many boxes and then it's made redundant and then another cutter. Now it's not, that cutter's not for the bin, but if it gets resharpened, it obviously just makes it smaller, you know. So what I tend to do with my old cutters is I get them resized into sort of different cutters, like for instance into maybe a 6mm cutter for producing slots and stuff like that there, rather than just sort of, because spiral bits are quite expensive. How many boxes would you get out of a spiral bit? 50, you know, that's a sort of guess. It's really until you start to see maybe it not producing as clean as cut as you want, you know, it's maybe sort of, you end up with a wee bit of a sort of furry edge. Although it'll still sort of cut, you just have to clean up that edge. So that's it changed over. Now what I want to show you is sort of to be able to move the stop a certain distance. So we're going to take a measurement of our mortise here, and then obviously our next mortise has to be the same length. Okay, now you could be sort of like you know, loosening that off, moving it. You know, if you're trying to move sort of 0.1, you know, or something like that there, 0.2, half a mil, that's actually sort of quite tricky to do. I know sort of Anchor have sort of like this sort of mesh teeth system that you can move it, but I think it only sort of moves, you know, a millimeter at a time. The newer stops have a wee sort of, you know, basic micro adjust. But I've sort of come up with something that I found that sort of works for me. I've got this bit of brass. It's literally just sort of epoxied onto the top. And what I do is just blow the dust off that before you see it, so it looks nice and clean. I've got this, right? So it's a wee digital sort of plunger. Okay. And I basically put that on. That presses against that brass bit. Okay, gives that a wee sec. If you can just see there. So I'm Mr. Spielberg now, by the way. So that presses in there. So let me see if we can turn that on. Okay. Okay, so you can see that there. So I plunge it in a wee bit and then clamp it in place. Back to professionals. Okay, so I clamp this in place. Okay, so my plunger's plunged in a bit. Okay, and I just press 0. It gives me a 0 reading there. Okay, now I make a cut and scrap. So our fence hasn't changed. It's going to be the depth of the cut. So what we want to do is we want to measure this. Okay, so you want to measure the length of your mortise to get a good accurate sort of reading where you are. Okay, so you want your plunger, this part here, to be in the middle. And we're looking at 38.64. Let's just take another reading just to double check. 38.65. Okay. So we'll just jot that down. 38.65. So our next mortise has to be as close as we can get to that. That's going to give us this system check-in allows you to move fractional. Okay, so over this side now. Okay, we've got this set, we've got our jig on. What we're going to do is make a cut, measure the cut. Okay, it's very important. Even though we've used the same block, we're more than likely going to have a different reading because we're going with the rotation this time. Okay, so Mrs. Spielberg, turn on the old dust extraction for me. I'll hold that a sec. Okay. Okay, remember guys, we're going with the rotation, so make sure you have the piece securely. Okay, so what we want to have is 38.65. That's okay, leave it on. Okay, and what we've got is 38.41. So we're at about 2.4. And that was using the same block. So might sort of show you guys if you're sort of having bad misalignment. You really want to try and set up a wee jig. I mean, these calibers, I suppose they maybe cost you 50 quid. Okay, it's not cheap. You could probably set it up with a standard set of calibers. I like this because it's got that plunger. So we have to move this, and without loosening off I don't even loosen it off. I sort of use the trusty hammer. Good for a few things. Remember that, Mrs. Spielberg? Anyway, so I want to tap this until I move the digital readout. You can see this moving. Okay, I'll not try it there. I didn't move it the full distance. Okay, so we've got 38.56, which is about 0.15 more that we had. So what we moved it there was pretty good to that. And we want to have 6.5, so we need to move it about another 0.1. What I'm going to do this time, rather than open up that cut, I'm going to cut it into a fresh piece so we can get a sort of good accurate reading. There you go, guys, 38.65. Guess what? That's what we needed. So, turn this effect off, please. Okay, so it shows you that it's a very accurate way to make them small adjustments. I'm sure a lot of you for years have sort of used the wooden block on both sides, and I suppose maybe sort of a bit confused why you're sort of possibly getting some misalignment. You know, climb cutting one way, normal cutting the other way, produces two different cuts. It's very small amounts, but we all know that it's enough to sort of throw the box off. And of course, that's, it's not nice. Everybody wants perfect alignment. That's pretty much going to be unachievable, but you'll get very good alignment, and then we can fine tune the alignment, because again, measuring is as accurate as I'm holding it. What we can do then is you can actually add wee bits of sort of clear tape just to the very front of your hinge. That forces the box in the other direction. That takes the very small amounts. That's where you're really fine tuning it. And I would only sort of look at doing that, towards the end, when everything's been lined, everything's ready to go, and you're fitting the hardware for the last time. Then I would pop it on, check it. If it needs to be fractional, I'll add a wee tiny bit of sort of clear tape just to that. There's another thing I'm sort of going to come out with soon, which I think will help. Is I'm actually going to come out with sort of very sort of small shims. These are actually the same sort of curvature as the front of the hinge, and they'll be in stainless steel and brass. And what you can do is you can just put, they'll only be sort of 0.05 of a millimeter, which is very, very small amounts. And you can pop one of these in rather than use sort of like, you know, sticky tape or anything like that, because it'll be the same sort of like material as the hinge. So it'll blend in a lot better, and that'll sort of help you take them sort of small increments out of it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to cut our mortises on the box. Okay, again, we're going to sort of approach it with a wee sort of light, you know, plunging, sort of just chipping away at that, just so that we sort of can, you know, definitely sort of eliminate, you know, the breakout here. So where you're going to have breakout when you come at this side, you're going to have breakout to the right. Okay, that's where your breakout's going to be, if it's going to be anywhere. It'll not be here because it's coming into the wood, whereas this way the cutter's exiting. Okay, so it's there. But we've done our scores. We'll do our chipping, just light plunges. I'll also go through and sort of let you know basically that if you do get some sort of breakout, you know, how you can possibly fix that. Okay, right, Mr. Spielberg, fire the dust extractor on there. Just to mention another thing, guys, you sort of seen me plunge it, go in, bring it back out and go in again. That's in case there's sort of maybe been any sort of chips in the way of the mortise there. It's always best to sort of go in twice so that you're sort of making sure you're getting that correct depth, okay? Dust extractor off, kid. So, mortise is cut. Okay. Lead and base. I suppose, you know, if, for instance, anybody does have a wee bit of sort of breakout, or they get one of the wee corners of the miters popping off, you know, the way to fix it, it's a bit of a pain to be quite honest, but I just got this piece sort of righted up. You really have to sort of start off with a right angled section, and you need to right in slightly and then take that wee piece off and pop it in. I mean, if it happens, you know, if it happens, it happens. You know, it's happened to me many's a time. The plunging definitely reduces that greatly. I mean, there's people that have used MDF clamp to it, stuff like that. Yeah, that works as well as a bit of a sort of, you know, breakout sort of part. But you've got to sort of glue it on and then a bit of wax, touch up. Not the greatest approaches, but it really sort of helps. What we're actually going to come out with, I want to bring people away from the router table when they're fitting hinges and locks, especially locks. When you go to sort of fit a lock on a router table, you're upside down like that. The same with the hinge too, but the bit's enclosed in there. You're really working extremely blind, and you're sort of sliding it between stops. You know, if you haven't set up the stops very accurately, you know, and measured the size of your box and so forth, you can result in too snug a fit of the lock or loose a fit. If it's loose a fit, you know, it's not great, you know, to be quite honest. Also, if you do, we bring out these wee sort of shims, you know, a loose fit, you can pop them in and that'll sort of at least tidy that up. What we're going to bring out is, we're going to bring out a lock jig, so that, believe it or not, we actually have a new lock in development. It's still the Neat Elite lock. The basics are there. We're actually making improvements so that it's a really nice fit and a mortise that you can produce with a jig and a handheld router. Okay, one router bit will actually do both mortises. First your plate, and then you'll go a bit deeper for the case. And the case will be, well, I'll not tell you too much about the lock, but it'll be really sort of nice and neat. What the jig will also have is it'll have a piece that comes down the front here, which is your fence. You'll clamp it, but it'll have a hole down 16 millimeters, and that is going to be for your keyhole. And you can just put your drill in and drill, because the keyhole is another thing where you can easily sort of be off half a mil, and it's like, oh dear, I have to widen that, escutcheon up and all that sort of stuff. So this will be, write your mortises, drill your hole, bang on. And then we're going to sort of have a jig coming out, so that when you have your box together, say like that, you can align the sides. The jig will sort of fit, still in a bit of development, but the jig will fit over this one pass. Okay, so it'll be sort of like self-centering. One pass to the router, one pass, very, very, very good alignment. So it takes all this sort of setup out of it. Of course, you know, if you like that way, boom. I'm not actually too fussed on it because you're sort of working very blind. Okay, so hinge, slot that in. Okay, got that in. Let's present her back. I usually present my back like this. Okay, just make sure we're in. Nice and neat. Okay, so that's them in. That's the sort of alignment we've got first off, without any adjustments. Now, it's fractionally out there, and I mean it is real fractional. Your thumb can just barely sort of pick that up. This side, toady. There's no point in sort of making any adjustments to that until way on, until you're sort of like near the final fitting stage. But that's generally what you're going to look like. I know the guys who bought the kit will have brass hinges, but I use stainless steel in these ones. Okay, so we've got a nice side-to-side alignment. We're touching nice down at the front and at the back. I mean, the gap is maybe sort of 0.1, 0.2 at the most. So that's nice. Now, what I'm going to show you too is the drilling of the holes, but the easy way, okay? But back in a wee sec. Right guys, so we've done our test fit. Nice alignment, really was. You follow the setup, you too can easily get it, you know. Just got to be careful. Like I say, when we bring out them sort of jigs, the idea of bringing them out, really, you know, it's not about sales, it's about making it easier for people to sort of fit your hinges. You know, if something's just too hard to fit, people won't use them, you know. So here we are. Now when I fit the hinges, if you notice in our hinge, our Neat Elite, there's one side's a smaller sort of pin than the other side, okay? I tend to like the smaller pin to the outside, but to be quite honest, it doesn't really matter. These hinges, as you can see, are fully round. It's the only ones in the market, you know what I mean? They can literally any way up, okay? Nice and neat, that's what we like. So when it comes to drilling the holes, obviously the traditional way is to pop your hinge in, slide it into place, and then with maybe sharp point, scratch oil, whatever you use, you pinpoint to give your sort of drill bit the starting point. You obviously want to make the point so that it's just fractionally off center towards the front. That the idea of that. Now we're talking fractionally, you don't want it sort of too much because then the screw head doesn't really sit nice in the slots. But you want it sort of 0.1, 0.2 at the max towards the front. The problem with that sort of traditional way is it's maybe not so bad when you're sort of got a sycamore in here, or if it's, well, ours is an MDF core, but we're still seeing sycamore there. But for instance, say you were sort of putting it into solid wood and it was like oak, walnut, something like that, ash, some sort of quite hard bits of grain there, and you tend to find that when you push it in, if you've sort of got a hard bit of grain on your center, no matter what, that wee sort of like scratch oil wants to go to the softer point. It's just the way it is, okay? So we developed this wee sort of simple jig. I mean, really basic. Look at that. You know, it's just the same sort of as the Mortise. So same width, same radius. The holes are offset by 0.1 to the front, okay? This is ensuring that your hinge is pulled tight into the mortises that you've sort of routed, okay? So okay guys, I mean, very basic. And this was introduced to make it, well, it was initially sort of, I brought it out as a prototype to make it easier for myself because we were producing so many boxes, you know, and you were sort of hit and miss. If you're doing lots and you're sort of like with your scratch oil and you're marking them out, you're only human like, so you're going to eventually mark some that are off, and of course what it does is then it pulls your hinge in the direction that you're off. If you're back off center, you've pulled that hinge back off. All that work, you know what I mean? And it's not aligned, you know, but yet if you put the hinges on without screws, it's aligned. You put the screws in, it's not aligned. You got to drill that, plug the hole, re-drill. I mean, you don't need to do that. Simple, wee jig. As long as you sort of keep your drill, you know, at 90. Now you don't want to be drilling like that. There you go guys. hunky dory. Do the next one. Like I say, you know, if you're doing, you might only be sort of doing the odd box, or you might be doing, maybe you put your boxes into exhibitions, stuff like that, shows. You may do a few. It's a bit of a no-brainer, like, to be quite honest. Okay, get our lid. Same principle. Pop it in. Obviously you want to make sure that your drill isn't sort of protruding too far, you know, right through the lid. Wow, that wouldn't be good at all. There you go, guys. And if you look at the screw holes, if you can try and look straight down on them, they're just fractionally forward. You know, guys, it's win-win every time with that there. So, you've got them done. Next week, we're going to be looking at what we've got to do is we've got to add some coating around these edges. We're going to add a wee sort of micro bevel. Okay, some people like it to be quite a sharp fit there. I prefer a wee bevel. I usually don't put on a heavy bevel, but on this I'm going to put a slightly larger bevel because there's a wee bit of sycamore there, there's a bit of sycamore underneath. I actually want the separation to show a wee bit of sycamore. So I'm going to cut the bevels next week on the router table with our diamond bit, and then we're going to add just a wee light sealer and then some wax. We're then going to add the base. I'm going to show you how to, you know, I used to sort of do bases that were, you know, MDF veneered both sides because from underneath you could see that it was nice and wooden. But over the years I've sort of thought, well look, you know, having that down, if somebody has that down on sort of like a polished surface, you know, I would definitely sort of, after being moved, it's going to scratch it. So we sort of then decided to line our bases underneath, okay? But not just to sort of like get the underneath and just stick a bit of felt over it. I've seen loads of that. Wow, like, I'm going to show you a better way. If that's what you've been doing, fair enough. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to show you a tidier way so that it looks very, very neat, okay? And then we're going to line the inside base because we're showing our lid. We're going to add the hinges. I'm going to show you how to polish up the screws the easy way. And then I think, to be quite honest, I don't think next week's going to be our last one. I think there's maybe going to be 2 more. We'll see, because Mrs. Spielberg usually does the lining. Oh, but don't worry, and I'll be holding the camera. Hey, so she'll probably have to go to the hairdressers, hair done, nails done. You know the score. Anyway, I'll probably be in the corner with a few beers. Guys, see you next week. Stay safe.